I am working at University of Mainz. It's near Frankfurt, and there's a department, there's an Institute of Sports Science and a Department of Physical Education. And in this department, I'm responsible for dance didactic and dance research. Maybe this could be important for us all who's coming together here and which point of view on the object of research one has. This afternoon, I'd like to present you the main results of my dissertation. I finished 2011 in the German Sports University in Cologne, and there in the dance department. The purpose of this study is to capture the students' insider's view in relation of certain movement composition lesson procedures, which are difficult to be real only by observation. In order to come closer to this insider's view, an appropriate method design had to be developed. In this presentation, I like to speak about the initial point of the study, the state of research, shortly about the theoretical background, and I will focus on the study and the method, especially the video-stimulated recall interview. The initial point of this study are inhibitions and problems in relation with the various requirements of teaching movement composition to which German physical education teachers in this field are often exposed to. Especially for inexperienced dance teachers, it is often difficult to find suitable approaches for dance and movement composition. Furthermore, dance in school is, compared to other sports, a widespread phenomenon. For many teachers, it is confusing, but nevertheless appreciated. Physical education teachers are often on one's own to find creative ideas and appropriate teaching methods. A male physical education teacher describes, "I feel very uncomfortable when I do that, and actually I teach dance not at all." Reason for these inhibitions and problems in relation with the various requirements of teaching movement composition are maybe grounded in the fact that teachers often have misconceptions of the student's point of view in teaching situations. In Germany, one can find studies in the field of physical education and pedagogy which focus on students' wishes in educational context. Especially gender-based differences affect the estimation of dance, gymnastics and soccer. Male students estimate sports, for example dance, gymnastics in a German gymnasium, as very unpopular. However, female students ask for more dance in school. Besides these actual wishes, there are no German studies to find focusing the pupil's insider's view or experiences with dance making. Until now, German research in dance education focused on young people's experience in dance education to a lesser extent. Unfortunately, especially German research on the student's insider's view in movement composition process is, comparatively to the American research, maybe Scandinavian too, and the British research in dance education, not well developed. Although sophisticated research programs could emerge promising findings concerning recommendations for teaching movement composition process. For example, some international studies approach the insider's view exemplarily. Bond and Stinson collected in their study statements from dance students regarding the experience of effort and engagement in dance. Actually, Giguère examined children's cognition within the creative process in dance. To understand the students' experience in dance, several researchers used observations and interviews as a methodological approach to this topic. All of these studies used the students' own words or drawings to describe the experience in dance. My research in dance education is influenced by this state of the art, and I like to find out how video-based methods can help to get the insider's view of the students. My study focuses three main research questions and guided the investigation. The first one is, what is the student's insider's view during movement composition process? And the second, what are their cognitions and emotions during movement composition process? After a first analysis of the material, I focused on following aspect. Are there certain strategies during improvisation, composition, and presentation to resist the harassment of the self-esteem. This report will mainly focus on the third question due to its potential to provide recommendation for teaching process. Now, I will tell you about the theoretical background of my study. In the first instance, an approach of the term student's point of view and insider's view of the movement composition phenomena can be conducted by a sport psychological action theory, a psychological view of it. The perceived configuration of person, environment, and task is considered as the essential basis of intentional behavior, resulting in the subjective definition of one's own situation. Consensual situation definitions are essential for social communication and interaction. Each of the situation components is subjectively appraised with respect to the two situation dimensions mentioned above, here. First, the valence relation is related to the subjective activeness or responsiveness of the situation. Second, the competence relation is related to the subjective controllability of the situation. Then, deciding on acting or not acting depends on the perceived degree of valence and competence and the valence-competence relation. In this slide, you also can see the person, environment, and task aspects again on the left side. In this slide, you can see also appraisal dimensions related to situation components. Under the valence perspective, here, there are personal motives, task incentives, and the context of an environment important. Under the competence view, there are personal capabilities, task demands, and environment opportunities important for one's own situation definition. For example, the opportunities of the environment are a room and the possibilities of the persons who work with you in a group, for example. And it is also important if you do assessing, fail, gain, or lose in this situation, and this can influence the expression of emotions. It is widely accepted to use stimulated recall in educational research. This approach is often used by researchers to discover events of interest within the classroom. The essential element of this method is to comprehend and to reconstruct expressed thoughts and emotions which were recently experienced in lesson situations. Here you can see the research plan, which includes the videography and observation in the first research phase. Here, the selection of sticking situations, the implementation of the video stimulated recall interview after every lesson, and the data analysis. The video stimulated recall interview contains a two-phase process to investigate the insider's view. These phases initially use videography of relevant situations and subsequently stimulated recall interviews. Essential features of this approach are the images from a video camera and the use of the technique of stimulated recall in interviews to conduct immediately after the lesson. That is necessary to obtain participants' reconstructions on the lesson situation in their personal meanings. The lesson observation was realized over a 12-week period. The research participants of my study were students aged 10 to 12. The students attended a culture class in a gymnasium near Cologne. The majority of the children have middle-class backgrounds. The whole group of the video observation study consists of 89 students from 3 different culture class groups. 37 of them participated at the video stimulated recall interview. Here you can see the research plan again. First of all, we had to do the observation and to film sticking situations. Why that? Therefore, in so-called sticking situations, the action-controlling thoughts become aware and make it possible to express and verbalize them in video interviews. In contrast to cognitions in movement composition process, it is important to take into account that automatically known and often repeated movements are less attention-binding and thus not necessarily aware. For example, if you pull on your t-shirt or something like that. By regarding these different cognitive states of movement awareness, which are content-dependent as discussed above, the chosen lesson situations as a narrative stimulus in interview situations should be those reflecting sticking situations where students' attention is activated. Therefore, these situations should not reflect routines and unimportant process. That means for the study that the data material had to be screened for relevant situations in which students' attention was directed to the movement composition process, and that these situations could be reported after the lesson as well. Thus, following aspects should be considered by selecting these sticking situation or relevant situation in movement composition lessons, and to find out the action-guided thoughts. Students' attention is directed on complex action and not on routine activities. The attention is goal-directed as soon as goals can be chosen, changed, quit, or achieved. Action is directed to emotions. This can be a situation in which two or more students experience positive or negative emotions. To this belong, for my study, on the one hand, positive effort situations, and on the other hand, less disturbing situations. For example, joy about quick movement solution, or feeling ashamed by moving in front of the class, or quarrel about realization of movement solution were chosen. Now I like to show you an example of a sticking situation in point of the view of the teacher and the spectator, the researcher. The theme of the lesson was to explore new ways and possibilities of walking. The task given from the teacher is walk in curves like a snake. And now I will explain you the implementation of the video simulated recall interview and immediately after this lesson situation. In the first part of the so-called non-directed introspection, the subject is asked to report freely and self-structured, as you can see here. This is a non-directed introspection. I ask one of the students you have seen in the video, what is your idea about this situation? And the student answers, oh yes, I thought about lying at the ground, yes, because I don't often do that and I feel very well with it and nobody else did that. And I don't want to do things everybody does. Like these curve movements they do. It's very interesting to look into the interview about himself. The next step is that the researcher differentiates the question via clarification. Several important hints for the researcher to be considered can be type of generating understanding, keeping silent, especially listening as a conversation technique, or flexible handling with a guided interview. Interfering questions are used to separate the action-guiding thoughts at the moment of the situation, which were in mind within the situation, from those which are in mind afterwards for the justification of a situation. These questions are applied in the first phase of a communicative validation. For example, did you describe the situation as you have it experienced in the lesson? And what is your idea right now about it? Now I will focus on the importance of the data analysis. The so-called inter-coder reliability shows to what extent different coders agree in the coding of the same text. Non-conformity between different analysts can be statistically calculated by Cohen's kappa coefficient. These analyses were made by two coders with a sample of 20% of the transcript material. The comparison of coder 1 with the author revealed highly correlated accordance. The results of coder 2 with the author were highly correlated as well as being coder 1 and 2. This indicates a good reliability of the method and an outcome that is not due to the subjective rating of only one observer. In this slide, you can see 4 loops which represent the phases of analysis. The results and the theory-based category system show that in addition to the action theoretical perspective, another theory about self-esteem projection and self-enhancement had to be added. The student seems to use certain strategies to protect the self-esteem. In my study, I found out 4 of these strategies. It is the strategy of selective interaction, situation, preference, movement preference, and self-exploration, as you can see in the slide. And now I will focus on the first one. In the context, 2 minutes. Okay. I only finished in 2 minutes. In the context of this study, the social form and the partner choice played a major role from the student's point of view. The personal interest in cooperation with a familiar partner and in knowing each other better now seems to be important in improvisation situations. As you can see in the slide, there's an example of an interview. A further field in the pupil's joy in a successful partner choice and movement solution. These statements could be used to formulate an assumption that the selective interaction principle becomes important. In improvisation and composition situations, pupils experience joy in combination with the selective interaction principle that can be characterized as following. A positive social framework and the cooperation with a familiar partner gives pupils safety in lessons which movement composition phases, and thus they experience joy. This aspect was associated with the selective interaction principle in several sections of the results. The knowledge regarding that principle of resistance against the threat of self-esteem might be helpful to teachers to anticipate or to estimate specific students' reactions within close or free choice of the social form. And you conclude this didactical implication in order to get oneself into a movement composition process. It is important to consider that partners are familiar with each other. This didactical implication stands maybe against social education aims some physical educators have. You have to recognize if you mix up the partners all the time, it could be difficult to get the students into a movement composition process. In my study, I found out 4 more didactical implications concerning the attractiveness of the tasks, the feeling of safety in organizational forms, the congruency with movements, and also it was important to deal with feedback after a presentation and the individually recognition of the children. These results are related to the subjective situation definition I showed you before in the theoretical background. Okay, come to my conclusion. Summing up, this study shows the realization, practicability, and applicability of the methodological combination of videography and video-stimulated recall interview in the research field of dance pedagogy. The video-stimulated recall interview provides the opportunity to reveal pupil thoughts and emotion in composition-oriented lesson situations. And, however, the last point, the interviewer gets a sophisticated view of the responder's view too. And now I'd like to thank you for your attention.
She came.
Okay.
Okay, a few questions before the next.
Just a quick clarification of the situation where they're watching the video. They see the video before the interview, they do that as a group, they do that alone. How does it happen that they get to see themselves in doing whatever they were doing before or during the interview?
It's immediately after the lesson. For example, this the video you have seen here. I put out one person, one student, and they got to see himself. He got to see himself at the computer screen in this situation. And then I asked, okay, what was on your mind in this situation? And then they started to talk, like you have seen here in the small example.
Okay, sorry.
I was just thinking, it wasn't completely clear to me, the sticking situation, the relevance, who decided the relevance?
It was the teacher. For me, the study has the aim to help the physical education teachers to be clear what happens in lessons like this. And the teacher you heard in the situation was also with me and told me, okay, there was this and this and this in this lesson I feel not very well with, and I talked to them, and then we decided this is the sticking or relevant situation.
Yeah, of course, sorry.
Because I thought you said that you could also study it from the students' pupils' perspective, or it was only from the teachers?
This was only from the teachers and me as a researcher, to find out are there emotions and are there some ideas I can put on after the lesson, not the routine activities like pull your t-shirt and do your shoes. And
Okay, thank you, Claudia.
Thank you.